All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a close look at a really fascinating piece of Bengali folklore called the Golden Roti. And, stories like this, they aren't just fairy tales for kids. They're actually these profound ancient frameworks for understanding how human beings deal with total adversity and ultimately success. We're going to trace this narrative from the absolute rock bottom of human desperation all the way to some seriously unbelievable magical intervention. We'll see exactly how the choices these characters make end up completely sealing their fates. Let's get started. So what really happens when absolute poverty meets unimaginable greed? It's a fantastic question, and it perfectly sets the stage for everything we're about to cover. We're essentially looking at a massive collision between two totally different families dealing with extreme circumstances. On one side, we've got a family with literally nothing, scraping by just to get a single meal. And on the flip side, they're relatives who have plenty but are just completely consumed by what they don't have, or honestly, what they're terrified someone else might get. It's a classic setup for sure, but the way this particular story unfolds gives us an absolutely brilliant look into the psychology of scarcity versus the psychology of pure envy. To really understand this, we've got to look at our two main families. First up, you've got Sabuj, his wife Rina, and their young daughter Tori. They are living in crushing, heartbreaking poverty. We're talking daily meals of panta, which is just leftover soaked rice, and maybe some taro root. But here's the kicker. They are fundamentally grateful. Sabuj just managed to scrape together enough to open this tiny little shop, a tiny glimmer of hope. Now contrast that with Sabuj's brother, Suman, and his wife. They live totally comfortably. But instead of being happy that Sabuj is taking a step out of poverty, they are incredibly threatened. Suman's wife literally frets over the idea that Sabuj might one day become richer than them. So their wealth doesn't bring them peace. It just feels this paranoid obsession with keeping Sabuj down. And then there's this completely heartbreaking moment. Little Tori, who is just a kid, is absolutely starving. She's dreaming of just a tiny bit of fish or meat. But the second she sees the crushing guilt on her parents' faces, especially her dad, who feels like an absolute failure as a provider, she instantly suppresses her own hunger. She makes this promise to never complain about food again. This is so absolutely crucial to the story because it establishes just how pure Sabu's family is. They aren't just poor, they're deeply empathetic and fiercely protective of each other, even when their stomachs are completely empty. But things go from bad to an absolute nightmare real quick. The jealousy from Suman and his wife, it's not just passive gossip. On a stormy night, pouring rain, they actually sneak out and set Sabuj's brand new shop on fire. Sabuj was sleeping inside to protect his inventory, and he barely makes it out alive. And that kicks off a horrific chain reaction. Sabuj is severely burned and left paralyzed on one side of his body. Since he can't work, Rina takes on this grueling job at a brick kiln. But then the kiln owner moves abroad and it shuts down. Totally desperate, they plant a tiny wheat crop. And wouldn't you know it, right before harvest, a herd of elephants comes through and tramples the whole thing. I mean, it is just a relentless, suffocating wave of bad luck. And as if the fire, the paralysis, and losing their jobs wasn't enough, they hit another devastating wall. To buy the medicine that is literally keeping Sabuj alive, they have to sell their cow, Dabuli. Now, in this rural setting, a cow isn't just livestock. It's their cherished security. It's practically a member of the family. Selling Dabuli strips away their very last safety net. So now they are entirely destitute. A paralyzed father, zero income, and absolutely no food. And right when you think they can't sink any lower, the cruelty just peaks. After going days without eating, a starving Tori goes over to her uncle Suman's house. She's just hoping for a handful of rice. But instead of any sort of family compassion, they mock her and cruelly turn away. They flat out tell her that poverty severs family ties. It's such a powerful moment because it proves that poverty doesn't just take away your food. It reveals your true enemies. It strips away all the polite societal illusions. And Tori realizes she has to protect her mom from this humiliation and never, ever ask for help again. Now, you might be wondering, how do they not just completely give up? Well, despite the familial betrayal, and despite Suman even threatening to steal their land, Sabuj and Rina hold on to their faith. They frequently talk about Srishtikarta, the creator. In this folklore, the creator isn't just some distant concept. It's the ultimate, active judge of human patience. Sabuj and Rina refuse to curse their fate. They firmly believe that this whole devastating sequence of events is a test. It's a trial, and they accept their suffering with a grace that is almost unimaginable, completely refusing to resort to anger or theft. This brings us to a huge turning point. They are at rock bottom, near starvation, and everything hinges on the simplest act of making a meal. Rena and Tori managed to scrape together a tiny, tiny handful of wheat that the elephants somehow missed. They grind it up, and Rena starts making a single roti, just a simple flatbread, so her starving daughter can have one last bite to eat. They are fully expecting this to be their final meal before they starve. And boom, the absolute impossible happens. The second Rena finishes making the roti, the dough literally transforms into solid gold. And it doesn't stop there. Rena, totally in shock, drops it into an old pot, and that pot instantly turns to solid gold too. The magic is contagious. Then, in this moment of chaotic, beautiful luck, Rena trips. The glowing roti flies through the air and lands right on Sabuj. Instantly, a bright light washes over him, and his paralysis, completely cured. He just stands up, fully healed. In the blink of an eye, their health and their financial security are completely restored. Now, what would you do with sudden infinite wealth? Sabuj's reaction is actually incredibly humbling. He doesn't get arrogant. He realizes that the crazy elephant attack, the fire, the agonizing suffering, it was all a massive test leading to this reward. He genuinely views losing his tiny shop and their small patch of wheat as necessary sacrifices orchestrated by the Creator to make room for this massive blessing. His gratitude is immediate and it is deep. So, Sabuj and his family are finally safe. They upgrade their home, their pantry's full, and they have peace. But over at Suman's house, total meltdown. They are absolutely furious. The very people they tried to destroy are now richer than they could ever imagine. And instead of looking in the mirror and reflecting on their own cruelty, what do? They start spying. They creep up to Sabuj's window, peek in, and actually see Rena using the magic roti to turn pots into gold. And in that instant, their envy turns into a full-blown plot. Driven by just completely blinding greed, Suman and his wife decide to cross the line. They don't ask for help. They certainly don't apologize. They break in. They sneak into Sabuj's house, wait in the shadows until the room is empty, and then they strike. They pull the magical roti right out from under the bed where it was hidden. They rush back home, totally convinced that they are about to multiply their own wealth into infinity. But here's the thing about magic in these folktales. It's like a mirror. It reflects the soul of the person using it. Suman greedily tosses that stolen roti into a large pot, expecting a mountain of gold. But instead, the malice in his heart triggers a violent, magical booby trap. The golden roti instantly melts down and erupts into a massive, terrifying swarm of flesh-eating bugs that immediately start attacking him and his wife. It is literally the stuff of nightmares. Everything just escalates so fast. The arrogance of the wealthy brother shatters in seconds. Suman and his wife come running out towards Sabuj's house, screaming, totally covered in this deadly swarm. Suman desperately begs Sabuj for help, and for the very first time he drops his pride. He confesses to everything, the lifelong jealousy, the theft, and he begs for forgiveness from the brother he spent so much time trying to destroy. But apologies that only happen because you got caught? They don't really fly here. Sabuj, despite being a good guy, is completely powerless to save them. The magic has its own agenda. Right there on the spot, the swarm of bugs completely consumes Suman and his wife. In just a matter of seconds, they are wiped out of existence. It's this immediate, incredibly poetic justice. The greed that consumed their minds literally ends up consuming their bodies. And if that wasn't shocking enough, the roti actually speaks. Yeah, the bread talks. To the absolute amazement of Sabuj and Rena, it delivers this chilling final verdict: sinners who cross the limit cannot be forgiven. It explains that while patience is rewarded, there is a boundary for constant, unapologetic malice. Once you cross that line, it demands absolute destruction. Having balanced the scales, the roti thanks Sabuj's family for their gratitude and then just vanishes right back into its magical realm. All right, taking a step back, what is this all really about? It's definitely not just about some magic bread. First off, it's a huge testament to unbroken patience. Sabuj's family lost everything, but they never lost their morality. Second, it really highlights how toxic envy is. Suman had a perfectly good life, but his obsession with ruining his brother literally destroyed him. And finally, it's a powerful reminder of cosmic justice, this deeply rooted idea that the universe is always watching, and ultimately, the scales of good and evil are going to be definitively balanced. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a quick thought about character. The magic roti didn't change who these people were, right? It just amplified what was already inside them. For Sabuj, it amplified his humility. For Suman, it amplified a greed that destroyed him. So ask yourself, if you were handed a miracle today, Would it reveal your gratitude or your greed? Take a moment to think about that, and I'll catch you in our next explainer.